welcome to the Layman's Guide to Drinking with Adam and Max. That's Max.
That would be Adam then.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking to you about education, drinking, spirits, all the good stuff that your little heart could possibly desire. But I know you, Internet. You're probably sitting there thinking, why should I listen to these two fools? Well, let me tell you. So, like I said, my name is Adam. I'm currently one of the bar managers at the Nomad Los Angeles Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. I've also been working in the LA hospitality world for the better part of a decade.
Ever.
Yeah, forever. Through that, I've opened numerous bars in Santa Monica and Venice, the west side of Los Angeles, done over 30 different selections of house single barrels of whiskey, built extensive programs over all that time. I also run a blog called bottledandbondla.com, where we go into much higher depth and nerdiness on the details and nitty-gritty of history and discontinuations and tasting notes and things along that line. I also have a massive collection of whiskey at home that annoys my girlfriend every single day. And that's my qualifications. Max, what about you?
I wear a good hat. I drink more than you.
Yeah, his qualifications are better. Anyway, today we're going to be getting started with Bourbon 101. That's what we're all here for, right? If you couldn't tell, he's a cowboy. I got a whiskey collection. We like our bourbons. So we're going to talk about the spirit that in 1964, by an act of Congress, was declared the native spirit of the United States. While it was declared the native spirit in 1964, bourbon's been around for centuries, right, Max?
Around forever?
Not forever.
Ever.
Nah, like...
It's a young country forever.
Yeah, the young do think they'll live forever. But in the early days of our country, and the early days of our colonies, we were made up of immigrants, still are to this day. And a lot of these immigrants were coming from Ireland, Scotland, other places, settling in to Pennsylvania, and they were farmers. What farmers do with their excess to preserve their grains is they distill. So they're taking the products that were around them, that they were growing, and to preserve them through the winter and to be able to transport them and sell them, they would distill their excess. In Pennsylvania, you get a lot of
rye in Pennsylvania. It's colder up there.
A lot of rye, a lot of spicier things. So that was our first native whiskey. But what we identify as bourbon first started to come into play after what's known as the Whiskey Rebellion. After our country was founded, we elected George Washington. We decided we need to pay for all these things.
Fucking taxes, man. Every time.
Taxes are terrible. And instead of taxing tea, we decided that we should tax whiskey. A lot of these farmers didn't like that idea. They started a rebellion. George Washington personally led troops halfway across Pennsylvania to help put this rebellion down. And as part of the compromise in the early days of our new nation, these farmers were offered territory in the new lands of Kentucky. Sounds like a mythical place, doesn't it?
It's a lovely land of corn. Therefore, we're going to start making our whiskey out of corn, because that's what we got a lot of.
And that, at the end of the day, is
practicality.
That, at the end of the day, is what bourbon is. It's a very specialized version of corn whiskey. The farmers in the area start barreling the whiskey they're making, start shipping it down the Mississippi to New Orleans, where you have a lot of people drinking whiskey. And this is the most believable source of the name for bourbon whiskey that I've ever heard. The people in New Orleans were sitting there noticing that the whiskey coming down the river was better than the moonshine their neighbors were making, and started asking for that whiskey from Bourbon County.
Said bourbon on the barrel. That's what they called it.
Depending on which whiskey myth you want to believe, who knows if that's actually true.
It's close enough.
Yeah, might as well be, right? So that's where bourbon starts. But where's bourbon now? You might have imagined as our country has grown, we've gotten a little less wild, wild west and got a little more codified.
Amen, a little bit.
And today there are very specific rules about how you can make bourbon whiskey. First off, little correction. Bourbon does not need to be made in Kentucky anymore.
Nope, continental United States.
Right,
Sorry, Alaska.
If anyone's growing corn in Alaska, I'd like to see. So yes, bourbon can be made anywhere in the continental United States, but 95% of all production still comes out of Kentucky.
And most people think it still has to be out of Kentucky.
Yeah, well, because they make good whiskey.
Damn good.
Now, once you're inside the United States, you have to be made from at least 51% corn. That means that the other 49% of your grains or your mash bill can be made up of whatever grain that you want. Traditionally, that's going to be a little bit of rye and malted barley to help kickstart that fermentation process. But you can also have a little bit of
wheat.
Yeah, as most famously in Maker's Mark, or in everyone's favorite unicorn bottle, the Pappy Van Winkle.
You could go 100% corn.
You could go.
Be crazy.
We'll do that later. Now that you've got your mash bill complete, you have to distill it to no higher than 160 proof.
And in the barrel at what?
125 proof.
You don't say.
I do indeed say. And every time you put it into a barrel, it has to be a freshly charred, brand new white oak barrel.
Why is that?
Because of unions.
Amen.
And because of flavor. 70% of the flavor of your whiskey, and not almost, all of the color in it in a good straight bourbon whiskey comes from that barrel. That is why bourbon has such an intense vanilla, caramel, and barrel presence as opposed to, say, Scotch, Japanese, or some of your other whiskeys, because it's a fresh barrel, freshly charred every single time. It's getting the most flavor extract that it can.
And so many of the characteristics that we think of as, oh, this is bourbon, is actually just from the aging. So where it is in the rick house, how long it was there, it all makes a lot of difference.
Absolutely. The aging is a huge component for it, but you'll notice that most American whiskeys, most American bourbons do not carry an age statement. That's because our laws give you a little leeway in there. To be a straight bourbon whiskey, you must be aged for a minimum of 2 years. If you are aged for 4 years or under, you must put the age statement on the bottle. But if you are over 4 years old, no age statement is required. So anything you put on that bottle after 4 years old is all up to the distiller, the bottler, and the marketer, which is why most bourbons that you see on the shelves carry no age statement. Most Kentucky distillers will tell you that the prime age for their whiskeys is between 4 to 6 years old, and most of these bottles are a batch of barrels of various ages. That's the other thing about age laws. Anytime you put an age statement on your bottle, that is the age of the youngest whiskey in that bottle. So if you want to make an 8-year-old whiskey, the youngest whiskey you can put in there is 8 years old. So it's a little limiting when your supplies are a little low.
But also, we have to say that some of that just varies with, the palate of the day. If you go back 40 years, a lot of those distillers think that the sweet spot for whiskey was 6 to 8 years old. You didn't want to over oak it. You wanted to taste your whiskey through that. Nowadays, I think most distillers would say that the sweet spot's like 10 to 12. I just mean that our palate is going older. We want more oak and barrel notes in there.
I'm just remembering every conversation I ever had with Lincoln Henderson before he passed, and he would vastly disagree with you. But that's the great thing about this. This is a lot of opinion that goes along with this. There are facts, but once the whiskey gets in your glass and once you get to put it in your mouth, everything changes. So, to recap, bourbon has to be distilled in the continental United States, has to be made up of a mash bill at least 51% corn, distilled to no higher than 160 proof.
Put in the barrel at?
No higher than 125. The barrel must be a brand new, freshly charred white oak barrel every single time.
Every time.
Must be aged for a minimum of 2 years to be a straight bourbon whiskey.
And?
If it's anything under than 4, must carry an age statement. Anything over that, it's up to you.
Let's drink.
Let's do it.
Here, I'll make room.
Well, there you are, Max.
Why, thank you.
Look forward to drinking more with you in the weeks to come.
I'll drink in between practice.
Max, if the folks at home want to come drink with you, where can they find you?
I'm at the Chestnut Club. Do a little Max's Corner on Tuesday, which is just kind of an informal, obviously, because that is me, discussion on whiskeys. We have usually 4 to 5 bottles. And here, and DJ here on Sundays, come do a little outlaw country with me.
And if you want to read more of the things that I like to write, you can head to baldandbondla.com, where you can see a lot of these conversations, and we'll keep it going every week. So, until next time, I'm Adam.
I'm still Max.
See you next time.